Hello again. For at least a century, Oxford and Cambridge universities have been universally acknowledged as the best in the land and also the most difficult to gain admission to. They were both able to insist on the highest academic achievements in candidates seeking a place at the two universities, which meant that only the brightest and best had even the remotest chance of being offered a place. What this meant was that most students were white, with a large number of Indians and Chinese people as well. There were hardly any black students because black teenagers simply don't do well enough at their A levels to be considered for a place at either university. Offers for the most popular subjects were invariably AAA or A starred AA or even A star, A star, A star, with 4 A's at A levels being required for some offers. In effect, this excluded black students. They simply do not do well enough on the whole at their A levels, even to gain an interview. So far, I've said nothing controversial, and it is easy enough to check up on all this. News emerged a few days ago that Oxford and Cambridge are no longer regarded as being the best and most academic universities in the country, having been forced into fourth and fifth place behind Durham, St Andrews, and the London School of Economics. The reason for their decline is not difficult to find, and I touched upon this subject in a video a short while ago. Before going any further, let me point out a simple fact which is easy enough to check up on by consulting any edition of the Times and the Sunday Times Good University Guide published in recent years. It is, by the way, this guide which has recently demoted Oxford and Cambridge from the top of the league academically. Looking at the rankings given academically for the universities in this country shows something interesting. If we look at the ethnicity of those being offered places at the top universities, Durham, say, now one of Britain's most prestigious educational establishment, one sees at once that every year hundreds of undergraduates of East Asian origin are admitted, and South Asian, together with a very small number whose families originally came from Africa. Most students are white. There appears to be a similar correspondence in the least prestigious British universities. That is to say that those which habitually rank very low down in the league tables compiled by various newspapers and magazines. Those with very high numbers of black students, such as the University of East London, scrape along at a place or two from the very bottom of such tables, while the fewer black students, the higher up the charts, are the establishment. I make no comment on this fact other than to observe that it happens to be the case. A few years ago, in March 2021, the Office for Students, the government watchdog whose role is to protect the interests of university students in Britain, issued a statement in which regret was expressed for the attainment gap in the outcome for those graduating from the nation's universities. The data showed that in the year 2019 to 2020, black students were less likely than white students to gain a first or upper second class degree at 96 of the 97 universities and colleges considered in the analysis. At some universities, the gap in attainment was more than 20 percentage points. Universities were told that this was not good enough and that more black students should be given firsts and upper seconds. In other words, the more black students you have at your university, the poorer your results are going to be, and the lower down in the rankings your university will be. Whereas if you have very few black students, you're more likely to be high ranking academically. Both Oxford and Cambridge have been systematically lowering their entrance requirements in the cause of increasing diversity, focusing primarily upon black students. There have always been many Indian and Chinese students at both universities, but the aim in recent years has been to reduce the numbers of this ethnicity while at the same time increasing the number of Africans and Caribbeans. This has meant that whereas a white student will need 3 or 4 A levels at A or A star to study philosophy, politics, and economics at Oxford, black students are allowed in with an A and 2 Bs. This does two things. It both diversifies the student body and also makes it less likely that the students will, as a whole, graduate with firsts. It lowers the academic achievement of the universities. This is why Oxford and Cambridge are now slipping down the rankings. Places like Durham lump all ethnic minority students together as black, Asian, and minority ethnic, which means that there are very few black people there and loads of Indians and Chinese. This means high academic achievement. Our two oldest and most prestigious universities are thus being degraded and sacrificed on the altar of diversity, which everybody knows, but few dare to say out loud.